Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Life by Design podcast. On this week's episode, I welcome back Shani Timms. Shani is a business coach and creative director for women looking to elevate their soul-led businesses. Shani is also my fiance. In this week's episode, expect to learn about the importance of masculine and feminine, what men need to know about integrity, how to navigate attachment styles, the number one ritual in our relationships, and so much more. Guys, this is just under 2 hours of answering all your questions. This is my favorite episode so far. I hope you enjoy it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Another podcast episode with the one and only Shani Timms.
Soon to be Shani Worrall-Thompson.
I know. You had the 5 and 5, Shani Timms.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have a few more letters.
Just a few, like how many more? 30 more.
A lot. I've got 30 in total. Shani will have a few more. No middle names.
Yes, we're doing that. No middle names for our kids, no middle names for me. Makes things a whole lot easier.
Worrall-Thompson is enough.
Yeah, it is.
That is not what we're here to talk about. We are doing Q&A style today, all things relationships in particular. I've had a few questions come through. We're going to jam on it, just back and forth and see where it takes us. What do you got?
Should we get into it?
Let's do it.
I love that people always start with sex, so I think let's start there.
I do.
For whatever reason. First question, what is the one thing that's impacting couples' sex lives that they may not have considered?
Well, one of the most obvious things for people's sex lives that they always think about, and it's very big in the sexuality space, is polarity. We know about that. We'll probably go into that at some stage today. But what I've seen in both a personal and professional level is more around resentment. And once you know what you're looking for when it comes to relationships, sex and resentment, you see it everywhere. But resentment continues to be one of those things that goes unspoken, but is massively impacting people's relationships. And a lot of the resentment is this unspoken expectations or unmet needs. But the resentment that continues to build, if you don't have good communication skills, impacts your relationship and sex life in particular.
I love it. And we heard this amazing quote the other day, and it was like the seed becomes the weed. Do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So for a lot of people, when it comes to communication and sex, there's just little things, little niggles that they don't think are important, e.g. the seed. But if they're not spoken of, they become the weed. And the way that I see those dynamics playing out is, and I reckon if everyone really tuned into this, they could see it, is the way in which you start to see your partner when the seed becomes the weed, or when you build resentment, you start to see them through a different set of lenses. And then as soon as you have the communication or speak to the resentment that you're holding, all of a sudden the lenses in which you see your partner like clear up. You've had that with me before, haven't you? Yeah.
And we always say that, like, no matter how small it is, it's like, let's just talk about it, because it's the small things that then become the big things, or it's like that little stone in your shoe that becomes the big blister or whatever it might be. So yeah, we've kind of had that from the beginning, just to talk about it, no matter how small it might feel.
Well, I think I saw that as one of the questions, so we might as well just jump ahead.
Let's do it.
One of our big kind of mottos is hard conversations make for easy times. And we, since day one of our relationship, or week one, we were friends for 6 months before, so this made it easier. Week one, we've had weekly check-ins.
I came up with it. Blake likes to take credit, but I came up with it.
I learned it through my relationship studies, and then Shani implemented. But we've had the weekly check-in since week one. And that for me is by far, for both of us, the most important thing in our relationship, the weekly check-in every Sunday. And I look at that through a number of different lenses. Firstly, nothing has a chance to build up between you and I. 4 years in, and the main reason we keep this clean energy between each other is because we have the weekly check-ins. The other thing that became really valuable for us is we don't fight a lot. In fact, I think we've only had like 2 or 3 proper blow-ups. And I think the reason for us, but also seeing this in a lot of relationships, is one of the main reasons we don't have blow ups is because nothing has a chance to build up. We have a lot of firm conversations, regular, but a lot of people's blow ups are actually pent up energy or resentments that they haven't spoken of, and then it has time to build, fester, and therefore it comes out the wrong way. We rarely have those because nothing gets a chance to build up. We're only maximum, you're only 7 days away from having a necessary conversation. So I look at that as by far the number one thing in our relationship. And also, I think you might have even asked me, and I've definitely asked you 3 or 4 times over like a 4-year period, if there was something that you had resentment towards me towards, what would that look like? And that's, again, another opportunity for us to talk out what we might be holding towards each other. And it's normal. Like, people don't want to talk about resentment, but when you start to see relationships and you start to see what resentment looks like, it's there. So being able to talk about it just clears the air between the two of us.
Clears the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so good because it enables you to practice communicating and practice having hard conversations.
Mm.
And imagine in, a year you're going to have 52, semi-difficult conversations, which just makes you not an expert communicator, but it makes you a much better communicator than if you weren't having these conversations at all.
Well, the thing with a lot of couples when they start implementing this weekly check-in is they've probably got a laundry list of things that they want to talk about.
Mhm.
Do not bring up the laundry
Do
list.
not dump it on your
Ever.
partner.
Ever. So if you're starting the weekly conversations with your partner, bring up one thing at a time. And obviously, because we've been doing this every week for the last 4 years, the things that we talk about or the things that come up, generally speaking, are quite minuscule now. And you've said a number of times, like, oh, this isn't a big deal. And it's easy to preface that with that. And relative to like big blow-ups, it's not. But I never wanted you, and I've, often kind of corrected you on it, of like, everything's important. But we are at the point now, 4 years in, of having a lot of tough conversations where it's very rare that anything is a big deal. Because if you're having conversations every week for 4 years, strong conversations, you've moved through 200 odd pieces. There's not much to play with now. So it's very rare that there's a really significant thing that happens in our relationship because we've done so many of the hard conversations which make for easy times. And for a lot of couples, they want the easy conversations which make for hard times. Whereas one of our mottos from the start has been hard conversations make for easy times. And it was clunky when we started. Those conversations were clunky. You were a recovering people pleaser, and I was probably too harsh in terms of how I approached it. But as we've practiced it, the delivery, which is such an important piece, has landed better. Because in the communication, if you don't get the delivery right, it's highly likely that your partner's going to get defensive. So you can say the words so many different ways, and this is a skill to develop, that when delivered well, defensiveness doesn't happen.
Which why making the container of a Sunday ritual, it's like, that it's a space to have these tougher conversations. So it's not coming, and it's not going to be blindsided. It's not coming as a shock. It's like you've set the container for this. And also, like, to premise, we have some weeks where we're like, oh, it's cruisy. Like, there's nothing really to chat about. Like, let's celebrate the wins. And, it can be really light, but I think it gets to be light because we've had those hard conversations as well. So I don't want to scare people off. Like, it's not like every week is like doom and gloom, but,
Yeah.
like the one that we had yesterday was beautiful. And, I was in tears and just sharing my gratitude and love for you. And, how much, I've changed as a person being in relationship together, and like how much you've allowed me to step into more of who I am. And I just think like it's a space to celebrate as well as like bring up, all of the what do we say, the weeds, or sow the seeds before they become the weeds.
Generally, anyone that knows us won't be surprised by this. Generally speaking, Shani is a much better kind of love and light person than I am. But she has taught me a lot over the last 4 years of just kind of the love and light better elements to life. But yeah, that's a good point in that they're not all gnarly conversations. I think probably one a month is probably kind of strong. And when I say strong, it might just be like we're ready for a new level up, or there's something that's clunky.
And you know when you're going to get your ass handed to you.
Yeah, I
Like
do.
it's, well, both of us. I'm like,
Yeah.
I know when I'm going into a ritual being like, oh, today's going to be big.
Mm. Yeah.
But that's okay.
You even started the conversation yesterday of like on
Mm.
Tuesday, and I was like, you don't need to say anything. What was it again? This might not be the time now to.
No, I think that I
I
brought up.
challenged you in an unnecessary time and manner.
You said I think we should think positive, and I'm like, I'm on my way to the hospital having gestational diabetes.
My
Can I have a
timing wasn't
moment?
great. My timing to challenge my fiance wasn't great when we were on our way to
That's all right.
hospital.
But you knew.
I knew very
Yeah.
quickly. You didn't have to say anything further.
Okay, so let's go to the next question.
Mm.
So we see you speak about this on social media that women always want more.
Mm.
And can you talk us through like why men should be embracing this or leaning into this?
Mm. So a lot of guys will be like annoyed potentially that their partners always want more. Um, but I would get you to see it through a different lens, and that is that like humans are designed to evolve. And if you want to have an epic relationship, it needs to continuously evolve. So instead of kind of getting into victim mode of like I'm not good enough and creating story around it, just know that like A grade relationships and A grade women will want more from you. And what is awesome now is going to be kind of boring in 12 months' time. Like we could have an epic relationship right now, and if nothing grows and nothing evolves for the next 12 months, I can guarantee you're going to be bored. Can you confirm that?
Yes, I can
She
confirm that on the
confirm that.
record.
That is on the record. So
yeah.
that is, you know, that might seem strange to the majority of relationships because, to be fair, the majority of relationships don't grow that much. Like they just go through the motions. But if you want like an A grade relationship and an A grade partner, then you have to like lock in for continual evolution and also continual accountability. Like you don't have to say much to me from an accountability point of view, but I know what accountability looks like by having you as a partner. And I think the best accountability partner that you have is your partner. And hopefully she doesn't have to keep you accountable, but she'll definitely keep you honest. She'll keep you like present. She'll keep you conscious. And like she's with you the whole time. So you don't really, in a good relationship, we're talking kind of a different level because there's a lot of blokes who aren't present in their relationship. So this is different. But the right relationship will keep you very honest and keep you present. And again, I hope not from a place where she has to like say too much or like drag you because she's probably already got you guys have got kids. She doesn't need another kid. But you, just by you being you, is the honesty and accountability that I often need.
So next question.
Yes.
We've already touched a little bit on the weekly rituals, but is there anything else that's been a game changer in our relationship that you could share?
So number one, the most important thing in our relationship easily is the weekly check-in, of which we do it every Sunday. Pick what day you want, but every Sunday. Beyond that, Explore Night's been very handy for us. So Explore Night is essentially where you bring something new to the bedroom. And I've been in relationships where things got a bit meat and three veg. Shani can speak for herself if she chooses to take that path. And that was a great fear of both of ours in the early stages, that we would find ourselves in a relationship where you're just going through the motions. And that for me is like death. I do not want that ever. So to bring some kind of accountability and structure to the fact that sex lives can get a bit meat and three veg if you're not really intentional, we started bringing in Explore Night, which is where we alternate weeks of bringing something new to the bedroom. And it, people often think a sex life is sex. Often for us, it's not. In terms of Explore Night, it's something different, and it can range from. There's a wide range of things. I've actually got an ebook on it, but for that's been really valuable for us. So we've got our weekly check-in, our Explore Night. The third one is date night, which we do every Thursday and have done from the start. It was really interesting when I put out a poll 2 weeks ago about how many people go on date night. And I put out a poll, do you go weekly or fortnightly? Do you go monthly? Do you go every now and then? And do you go never? There's a lot of people that went weekly and fortnightly. There's a few people that kind of go, monthly, and then there's a lot of people that don't go on date night at all. And in a long-term relationship, it becomes very easy to just go through the motions and not find ways to court your partner or to date your partner. So for us, date night has been super important, and we'll work out how we navigate that with kids. I know a lot of people, talk about kids being harder, and we have zero doubt that that's actually the case. So it's just a case of us working out how to navigate that with kids. But between us having our date nights, our explore nights, our weekly check-in, and then we also have a money date, like we've got 4 weekly touch points that continue to evolve our relationship. And even if for whatever reason we were passing ships in the night through the course of the rest of the week, which isn't our dynamic, but potentially the case when kids come into play, we've still got those touch points which bring us back together and bring us back to what's most important, which is our relationship.
Mm. And it's funny because we've been kind of, I wouldn't say shamed, but people have hung shit on us before because we're very structured and we have
They have.
a lot of structure in our week. But from our perspective, the structure brings the intention, and it allows us to have, as you said, those 4 touch points in a week that are driving our relationship forward. I would much rather have that in the diary and, be intentional about how we're spending our time rather than, some people are like, oh shit, we haven't had a date night in 6 months. And I think that's what happens when you lean on, let's just do it when we feel like it rather than let's actually plan it in and schedule it. And again, that might not work for everyone, but for us, it really works for us. Just knowing that we've got these things in our diary that are scheduled, that are moving our relationship forward.
Well, let's speak on that because I saw that come up as a question as well. For a lot of guys, they fall into one of 2 categories in terms of how they show up and their kind of personality and persona. They either fall into the category of like a really safe guy, safety, stability, security, familiarity, or they fall into like the more spontaneous guy, spontaneous, wild, adventurous, etc. Ideally, as a male, you want to have both dynamics playing out. And, in terms of a healthy dynamic within a relationship, it's important to have the safety, security, stability, familiarity as a real grounding base, but also the spontaneity, the aliveness, the wildness, the new adventures. And safety, stability, if that's just your piece, it's very easy to just become a bit meat and 3 veg. And at the other end of the scale, if you're just spontaneous and you're just wild and you're just kind of going with the flow, it lacks the grounding and the kind of safety that comes with the relationship. So generally speaking, guys will fall into one of 2 camps, but to bring both of those together is a really healthy way to keep the relationship alive over a long period of time.
Mm. Well, it's like what I said on our ritual yesterday. I was like, I feel like we've got our structure down pat. I would love, some more
Mm,
spontaneity in, maybe just going for go to the cafe and read our
mm,
book or something like that,
mm.
that can add a little bit of spontaneity to our structure as well. So I
Yeah,
think that that's also a point. It's like start with the structure and then it's like, then you can add the spice and add the spontaneity.
yeah.
But I think it's good having a balance.
I'm a pretty structured
I
male,
think we
which,
both are,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
which works well.
Yeah.
So I know you have a lot of women in your inbox and that you've coached a lot of women in your times. What's the number one fear that they come to you and they express?
I'd say the number one fear from women that I work with or that I have worked with previously is the very real fear that they will outgrow their partner. And I'm sure it's just kind of the type of people that I attract. But generally speaking, from what I've seen, women in my world value growth a lot more than their partners do. And it is a hell of a lot easier for the long-term health of the relationship if both of you value growth. I have seen relationships work where one values growth, generally speaking, the female, and he doesn't value it quite as much, but it definitely makes it harder. And I think the type of women that we surround ourselves with, more so these days, I think they'd be really challenged in the long-term health of a relationship if their fellas didn't value growth.
I think you're on very different paths. You know,
Yeah.
if one person's on a path of growth and one person's on the path of like whatever complacency, just doing
Yeah.
this, you're going to end up in very different
Yeah.
trajectories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the way that I look at it as well. Like, and this is a very kind of different school of thought. Um, but when it comes to growth, what I've seen way too much, and I think this is just society standards, like when we get into a committed relationship, then we stop growing. And you get complacent. Like, on what planet are you on where you think as a male, you becoming complacent and just going through the motions is attractive to your partner? What planet are you on? I do not understand how you can think that at all. And my school of thought, especially since we started dating, is you've made a commitment to me long term. The very least that I can do is make a commitment to continuously showing up and growing as a human. Whereas most of society goes, oh, my partner's made a commitment to me. Now I can just relax and become complacent.
And we see this. It's like guys get in
Fucking
relationships and then
gross.
they like stop going to the gym and then they stop working out because they're
Yeah.
like, I've got my woman.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all set now. Now I can just focus on all the
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a very sticky place to be in.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
find it kind of, in a weird way, kind of arrogant that you think just because she's committed to you, now you can become complacent and just drop the ball in all areas of your life. The very least that you can do, if she makes a commitment to you for life, you can make a commitment to her first and foremost, and you can make a commitment to yourself for your own continuous evolution and growth. That's how I kind of look at our dynamic.
So if you know, a man is listening to this and he's like, okay, far out, I can see that I've slipped into complacency. What can he start doing to show to his partner he's committed to the growth of the relationship? Is there anything that you can sort of think of to suggest?
I'd start with your environment. Like, if you're looking at some of the core pillars, putting yourself in an environment that challenges you is the best thing that you can do. And it can be very slippery to, like, most people in my world live a good life, but often the good is the devil of a great life because you look at it and go, well, like, I'm pretty comfortable. And why potentially give up good and comfortable for great, but what's unfamiliar? Because there's no guarantees when you step into the unfamiliar that it's all going to work out the way you want it to. So you might as well sit in this comfort zone. And then not only that, as a husband, as a father, to tell your kids go and chase your dreams, but you're not chasing your dreams, based on the research that I've read, they're a lot more likely to follow what you do than what you say. So it's worth considering, is there an integrity issue of which you're telling your kids to go and chase their dreams and you're not? But I think the place that you can start is environment. And you might not have one person that fits all areas. You might have one of your mates who's like fit as fuck and you go and train with him. You might have one of your mates who's in a really good relationship and you go for a walk with him each week and talk about relationships and life. You might join a business mastermind. Like, you're probably not going to have a one guy who's absolutely flying at everything and he's your one person. But you got to put yourself in environments that challenge you and level up. Because in particular, guys over the age of 35, the majority of them are dead. They're just sleepwalking their way through life, just going through the motions. And I don't know one of the amazing girls in our life, and we've got so many amazing women, who find a bloke going through the motions attractive. I don't know any. So what does it look like for you to continuously take yourself to the edge and what I call like sharpen the sword? What do you need to do to sharpen the sword in your relationship, friendships, business, fitness? Like, stay on your edge because that is when blokes are at their best. And like, I find it most attractive when blokes are at their best, as opposed to, oh, what have you been up to? Oh, like the same stuff for the last. Fuck, mate. Boring. Like, don't be boring.
Well, I know for you, every time you bring a challenge, whether that's a physical challenge, a mental challenge into your world, it's like you up level dramatically. And so it's like, even for men, if they're looking for that next fitness challenge that could add a bit of spark back into their life or add a bit of excitement. And even if they are kind of in that sleepwalking stage and like Groundhog Day, Imagine just bringing in date night ritual. Like
Yeah.
your partner will be like, "What podcast did you listen to? Where did you
Yeah.
get this
Yeah.
information?" You don't have to tell them the source, but I think they'll be very, very
Yeah.
happy with you, like, stepping forward and taking lead in the relationship.
Well, one of the challenges is you need your partner at times to bring to light that. I think you've probably brought it to light 2 or 3 times over the last 3 years of like, feels like you're going through the motions. And then, literally the next day I'll go and organize a fitness challenge or something that like levels up. So sometimes when you're the bloke, it's a slow, subtle slumber where you don't realize that you're just going through the motions for some blokes. Some blokes are like, I'm going through the motions, but some it's just this slow deterioration. And, whether it's your partner that holds you accountable going like you're going through the motions, or ideally you've got mates or a brotherhood or someone who can be like, mate, where's your energy? You got nothing. And it's that energy of being on purpose that and sharpening your sword and having a challenge that keeps you on your edge that's attractive to everyone. Like we see it. We see it in our friendship groups, the guys that are really on purpose and like on their edge, and then the ones that are just cruising. Like find your spark.
So something that we've done to find us back and find our edge is utilize MDMA therapy.
Mm,
Do you want to explain to the listeners a little bit about how it's really benefited us and our relationship?
yeah. So MDMA therapy is slightly different to taking MDMA when you go to a concert or a festival. Very different. Firstly, it's a lot pure, but um, MDMA therapy is at this stage the most effective treatment for PTSD. And not that we use it for PTSD, but the research is amazing, in particular in America. But we've used MDMA really effectively in our relationship. I think we've had 2 journeys together, and then you've had a couple on your own. I've had a couple on my own. But for us, our communication is elite, I would say, after 4 years of practice. But there's been a couple of incidences and situations that we found hard to move through just from communication. So in terms of MDMA therapy and how beneficial it's been to us, we literally went in with our therapist. We would sit blindfolded, facing each other, and we would just talk straight for 5 hours and just deeper and deeper and deeper. And a couple of the things that we just couldn't navigate together through communication just like were released. And I actually, anyone who hasn't done MDMA therapy won't understand this, but those that have will. It's like a piece of me was like, it was lodged in me, this thing that I just couldn't move through. And we spoke about it, so many times. And then when we went and did MDMA therapy, I felt it leave my body. And we haven't spoken about it since. So, we have a number of really beneficial tools that work for our relationship in terms of check-ins and date nights and, those type of things. And then every now and then you need to go beneath the surface, beneath the conscious level that you can access. And for me, between MDMA therapy, other forms of psychedelics, and Vipassana, they have helped me access a level that I can't access just in everyday life.
And I was looking back on photos of pre
Mm.
MDMA therapy and post. And for all the ladies out there, I say this, I'm like, doing the work is so much better than actually getting work
Yeah,
done.
that's one of my
Like,
favorite one-liners from you
it's
in our 4
wild.
years.
It's what, thank you.
Mm.
But it's like my face looks different. I look like you can tell when people are holding trauma in their face, and it's just like,
Mm.
it's that heavy brow, and it just, the lightness that came afterwards is crazy,
Mm.
because when you're under, blindfolded on, and when you've taken MDMA in this therapeutic setting, all of your like barriers are just like washed away, and it's like
Mm.
you're able to literally tap into your higher self and like say exactly what you need to say, or release exactly what you need to release in order to move you forward. And it's like literally the before and afterwards are like night and day.
Mm.
And it's like, imagine, we probably aim to do one of these a year, and imagine if you could do one of them a year in your relationship, like the levels that you could go to is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously mind blowing.
Yeah.
So, all right, next question. 3 things that have made your relationship a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah, this is massive. So there's so many, on social media, you hear about the red flags and the green flags of relationships and those type of things. But I really like the framework that I think has made our relationship so easy overall. We've had our moments, but overall easy. And that is having similar values, vision, and lifestyle. If you can find someone who has similar values, vision, and lifestyle to you, your relationship is going to be so much easier. So for us, super similar values, growth, health and fitness, friendships, you know, the beach, just like there's not much difference between us. I think, what would you say is the biggest value difference?
You don't like doing tea ceremony and
I don't
probably
like the tea ceremony at all, ever.
or like sitting down and having a cacao, you're
Yeah,
pulling cards. You're
no,
probably not
it's
like
probably a
that.
bit on the femme side for
Yeah,
me.
and I'm
But
not there gonna do an Ironman,
and she's not
so
doing Ironmans anytime soon. That would be our biggest value difference. But overall, our values are super similar. And then if you move from values into vision, what's the vision that you have for your future, for how you want to parent, where you're going, and then lifestyle. And for me, you know, Shani and I have spoken about this a couple of times now. From a lifestyle point of view, with us both working online, we wouldn't be able to date a 9 to 5 person because they just don't have the flexibility and freedom that we do in our lifestyle that makes it super important. And I didn't realize that before I moved my business online, just how important that was. But, you know, to get a partner with similar vision, values, and lifestyle is massive. And um, flexibility and freedom are massive for us. And in particular, from an evolutionary point of view, freedom is massive for the masculine. So at no stage in our 4 years together have I felt my freedom restricted in any way. And one of those reasons is because we live a similar lifestyle.
but imagine dating someone who was you were kind of like a homebody and enjoyed nature and go and taking the
Mm,
slow road in life, and then your partner was like going out every weekend, smashing bags,
mm,
partying and stuff. Like that would you're living two different lives,
yeah.
and even just like the play on effects of that. Like Sunday, he's probably he or she more likely to
Mm,
be hungover, and you're wanting to go out and do things.
yeah.
When you choose someone whose value aligns and lifestyle aligned, it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah.
And even going into parenting, I've got no doubt that like we're going to be aligned in so many of our
Mm,
decisions on how we want to raise little girl and our family.
mm,
And like that just gives me peace of mind knowing that we're on the same road together. It's not like we're a fork in a road,
yeah.
wanting to take
Yeah.
different paths, which is
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
So empowering and emasculating men. We see it done.
Great topic.
It's such a good topic. Can you talk through like the difference here and how we can really empower our men rather than emasculate it? Because we can see it. It's like clear as day.
It's the difference between women who empower their man and those that emasculate their man are worlds apart. And I would say that I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt here. I would say that the majority of women who emasculate their men don't actually know that they're doing it and are well intended. There's definitely plenty who are intentionally doing it, and I don't know why blokes would be in those type of relationships. But there's a lot that are well intended but emasculating. And I've been in a couple of relationships where I felt really empowered and a couple where I felt really emasculated. And, you know, I'm sure we'll go into it in a sec, the difference between like a power couple and a power struggle, because this part of it, the power couples really empower each other. The power struggles is through emasculation and things like that. And you, whether you've listened to podcasts, whether it's just feedback from me, whether it's skills that you came into the relationship with, you know exactly how to empower. And I don't think I've ever really felt emasculated with you. And if I have at any stage, I would voice that and find a way to reframe it. So I would go on a limb and say that 8 out of 10 women are emasculating their partner. And again, the majority are unintentional and well meaning, but they just don't know how it's showing up. So, can you think of any examples off the top of your head of ways that you might have emasculated me or ways that we've seen emasculation happen?
The one that irks you the most is when like women drive.
Yeah. Got a
And
thing
when
with this.
so say if we're getting in the car, like I know Blake's gonna drive
Yeah.
because he feels emasculated when
Mm.
I drive. And I'm fine with it because I'm like, cool, I get to be passenger princess. This is amazing.
Yeah.
But little things can creep up. And I think this is when our dynamic and polarity is a little bit off. But like
Mm.
I'll be like, oh, park here and kind of tell you what to do, even
Yeah.
though I'm like, you're very capable at choosing a
Yeah.
car park.
Yeah.
So it's funny that it can sort of creep up over time.
Mm.
But I would say for a lot of women, it's that resentment that builds up over time that
Mm.
causes them to emasculate their man.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's not like they're doing it deliberately or on purpose, but it's
Mm.
like when you're not speaking about things and you're feeling bitter and you're feeling, resentful, it's like
Mm.
that emasculation will creep in really, really easily.
Yeah. And even things where you block his ability to lead, like that's actually really emasculating. Or you talking like you taking the piss out of him in front of other people, in particular in front of other men, would have him feeling emasculated. Like there's so many little different things that women do that emasculate him. So, there's a real significant difference. And I use the bin example a bit. Like, Shani's excellent at voicing, like, I love it when you do dot, dot, dot. Take the bin out, wash the dishes, whatever it might be. That's a very empowering statement. What might be a more emasculating or fucking just straight annoying for any bloke on planet Earth is the nagging energy. And I get that it's a bit of a chicken and a dance, because if he steps into his power, you don't need to nag him, and vice versa. But if Shani's saying, I love it when you do dot, 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 as a bloke and as someone who wants to protect and provide, I'm probably going to do whatever it is that she says that she loves 10 times more than I actually need to. Then, I wish you would take the bin out, that kind of nagging energy. And for me, the difference between the two relationships that I've been in that feel very much power couple energy and the relationships that feel power struggle is I actually want to do stuff for you because of the way that you empower me, because of the language that you use, and because of my desire to be protector and provider. The difference for guys that are in power struggles versus power couples is the guys who are in power couples actually want to do the stuff for their women and are empowered to do it. The guys that are in power struggles think they should do it. And it's coming from that should, I'm meant to, I better. And I've been there. I've been in 2 relationships that I felt really empowered. And I was like, fuck, I want to move mountains for this person. And then I've been in a number of other relationships where I was like, oh, like I better, I'm meant to, I should. And that's the difference. And it's very rare for you to have to go, hey, can I remind you? And that's the awareness that we've got around our relationship. Like, it's very rare that I think one of the most draining things in a relationship is when you bring up the same shit time and time again. And one of the things that you're amazing at, because you have such awareness and care, is if I bring something to the relationship, you just go and do it. I can't think off the top of my head many times where I've had to come back to the same issue and go, hey, we're back here again talking about this. Like, that is fucking exhausting. So for both of us, when we speak to a struggle in the relationship, when we challenge our partners in a healthy way, what makes the relationship so powerful is the fact that we don't have to come back to it. And yes, there's some big things in the relationship that aren't just like fixed overnight. We've got some kind of deep wounding or pieces that we're really struggling with, but there's intent and there's progress. You might not get it perfect overnight, but there's progress. And that is one of the most liberating things for me in our relationship, is if I bring something to you, I just know it's done. I don't like, you're not going to complain. You just go and get it done. I'm like, holy fuck, that's progress. We're like, our relationship's evolving.
So, what tips would you have for men and women who feel like they're continuing to bring the same issue over and over again to their partner, and they feel like they're not being heard or respected, or whatever the story is that's coming up for them?
Well, the majority of people, I don't think, feel heard, seen, and understood in their relationship. So that's a major problem. So there's a lot around your communication style. But I would also, if I was coming to a bloke with this, I would also provide him a solution. So instead of just saying, I don't feel heard, give insight into why you don't feel heard, what that might look like. So, there's a real kind of basic framework of like I instead of you. So I don't feel about this behavior and what's the solution. So instead of saying you don't make me feel heard and you're shit and leaving it there, which isn't helpful to anyone, to come at it from a different angle of like, hey, I'm not feeling heard at the moment. Maybe speak to the behavior that has you not feel heard. And then what's the solution? At least he can walk away with a solution.
And guys love solutions.
Guys love solutions.
Because it's like they've got the plan and they can be like, okay, I know how to act next time,
Yeah.
or I know how to respond differently next time, rather than the guessing game of like, oh, she doesn't feel heard. What do I actually need to do to make
Yeah.
her feel heard? And this goes for vice versa. I know,
Totally.
it's like for women as well. It's like if you can be like, hey, next time I would really appreciate if you do
Yeah.
this, or it's just like not leaving it up to guesswork.
Yeah.
It's just saying what you need
Yeah.
and voicing it.
I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
One of the things that I must have been going through a stage where I was really closed off. And one of the things that you said was, and I've had ex-girlfriends pull me up on this as well, so you're not the first, is like open your heart more. It's the most unhelpful statement on planet Earth to a bloke.
You're like, what? How
Hang
do
on,
I
let
do
me,
this?
Let me just get the key. I'm just going to open my heart up more.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. So what can you bring into the relationship dynamic that is actually a solution or that can help him open his heart more? Like to make a statement like, I'd love for you to be more vulnerable. Like, what does that mean? Provide a solution, provide some kind of insights for a male as opposed to just a open statement that isn't actually that helpful.
Did I provide you with the solution, or did I just say that?
I don't think you did. I went on my own journey
Oh,
to
that's so
find
funny.
some answers.
Sorry, not sorry. That's so good.
Provide blokes with solutions to, like, if you're going to complain or critique or challenge your man to something, provide him with a solution. Don't just leave him with a complaint because that's not helpful.
Love it. Good. Noted. So let's talk about flooding, and not
Mm.
flooding in a water sense, but when you are in a heated conversation with your partner and you can feel that the tension's high and maybe you're not coming from a really grounded place like you would like to. Can you talk about this idea of flooding and sort of what it means?
So often in relationship dynamics, it's very easy for one or both parties to get a little bit heated. And generally speaking, if you get too heated, the conversation isn't going to end well. So you're better off if you're in a conversation and you're feeling the heat start to bubble amongst the two of you, you're actually better off tapping out of the conversation and then coming back to the conversation when you're regrounded. So when you're flooded and you're flooded with emotion, generally it's not going to go well from here. So what's super important if one or both of you feel flooded is that you communicate this. So generally speaking, come up with a plan as a team because you're a team. Don't forget that bit. So come up with a plan as a team as to like what you do when you're flooded. And it might be a case of, hey, I'm feeling myself getting overwhelmed, or hey, I noticed that we're getting flooded in this conversation. And then set some rules to tap out of the conversation and to come back. So the reason it's important to set rules when you tap out of the conversation or boundaries is because if you just walk away from the conversation, which is often the avoidant, then you're going to unsettle at times what might be the other person, who could lead into anxious. So in particular, if you guys have attachment styles playing out, set some boundaries. E.g., hey, I noticed I'm feeling flooded. I think it's best that we tap out of this conversation for 30 minutes, set some boundaries so the anxious person isn't chasing you around the house trying to finish the conversation, and then come back. But you would give yourself a minimum of 30 minutes, probably a bit more, to tap out of the conversation, go and do your things, reground yourself, and then come back to the conversation.
And like sometimes that could be going for a walk or just having some time out. Because I know that we've done that before. It's like, okay, I'm going for a walk, like come back and then we can chat about this afterwards.
Yep.
And it's just so nice coming from someone who was, recovering anxious avoidant, like to actually have that penciled in and be like, okay, we're coming back to this. Don't worry. But like I need time to kind of ground myself before
Yep.
we can chat about this again, which is so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next question says, my partner always wants to go into Mr. Fix-It mode, but it doesn't feel good for me. Is there another approach we can take?
Yeah. So when males and females are communicating, it's very easy for blokes to want to provide solutions because that's what the masculine does, and it's well intended most of the time. But it's often not helpful. So, and it generally will leave her feeling not seen, heard, or understood. So instead of blokes automatically going into Mr. Fix It when their partner is struggling or upset, there's a really simple framework that can help you. And it's understanding, does she want to be heard? Does she want to be hugged? Or does she want to be helped? And helped is often where blokes go to, but I would have that as the last option generally. So does she want to be heard? And what does it look like for you just to sit and listen and acknowledge and understand? Sometimes, and Shani at times when she's very upset, there's no point talking because there's no words to be said. Just sit there and hug. And that's obviously really effective if she's really emotional and struggling to want to talk or struggling to find language. And then third would be, does she want to be helped? And I would almost set a framework if she wants to be helped. And you and I have had this conversation years ago. I said, I'm going to default and assume that you want to be heard or assume that you want to be hugged. If you want to be helped, you need to ask for my help. So I will never go into Mr. Fix It unless you actually ask for it. So I don't think that's a bad setting to have as a default, heard, hugged, and then if she wants your help, for her to ask for it.
And I think that's so good. And I can almost feel you going through this kind of process when I am having a bit of a, meltdown or whatever. It's like, I know that you're just there and you're hugging me and you might be saying like, I understand, or like, yeah, I hear you, or, whatever sort of affirming statements that you're kind of going through. And then it just allows me to kind of ride that emotional wave until I'm more grounded and then I can speak about it. Because like when you are flooded, it's like you can't think logically and you can't come to terms with like what you need in that moment. But then there are some times where I'm like, can you just tell me what you think about this?
Yeah.
But again, I'm asking for it rather
Yeah.
than you being like, hey, I don't think you should have done that, or whatever, Mr. Fix It solution comes in.
Well, the other thing, just quickly on that, is a lot of guys are well intended in going into Mr. Fix It, but there's also a lot of guys who just can't handle emotion. So it's like, oh, fuck, what do I need to fix this? So instead of just being with and holding the energy that she's kind of bringing to you, you go into Mr. Fix It. And you see this even with people with kids of like, oh my God, what do I do? And generally speaking, as a bloke, the more discomfort you have in your own emotions, the more discomfort you're going to have in someone else's emotions. So the blokes that want to go into Mr. Fix It because this is quote unquote too much, which is generally an issue for the blokes, it's the ones that aren't okay with their own emotions. They're like, fuck. So just expanding your capacity to hold your partner's energy and working on your own emotional state so that you're okay with your emotions and therefore okay with someone else's emotions.
So this one's actually a question about me. But what helped you and Shani drop into a stable relationship so early in our relationship?
So one of the things that when we came together in our relationship, we were both kind of anxious avoidant in terms of our attachment style. And
Which is a fun dynamic to play
oh my
with.
God, you want to understand it fully.
Yeah.
Really. So knowing that Shani was anxious avoidant, I knew early on in the relationship the importance of integrity and consistency because nothing will unsettle someone's anxiety like a lack of consistency and a lack of integrity. So for us, knowing that the first couple of months were probably going to potentially spark some anxiousness in Shani if I didn't know how to navigate that properly, I was really mindful of the importance of consistency and integrity. And what that meant is if I said something, I did it. If I said I was going to pick her up at 6, I picked her up at 6. It wasn't 10 past 6. It wasn't 20 past 6. And I was consistent around how I was showing up. So I think probably 2 months in, Shani really started to kind of ground herself. But I knew in those early stages, and everyone experiences this, like, you're trying to understand each other. You're in the early stages. You're not sure what you can say. You're not sure what you can't say, and you don't understand the mind of your partner. So that was really important for us in the early stages for me to be super consistent so that she built a level of trust and safety in the relationship. The other thing that we had as almost like a motto for the first kind of 3 to 6 months of our relationship is there's no wrong question for the right person. So what that meant, and again, most relationships I would say go through this. Like you have a lot of thoughts going on in the early stages and you're not sure what you can share or what's going to, come across as a little bit crazy. But we really set the bar early of like, there's no wrong question for the right person. So that really gave Shani space to be able to communicate what's on her heart, what's going on in her head, and to feel more comfortable that she didn't have to kind of um, navigate these thoughts on her own. So, we had a lot of really open conversations early on, which grounded the relationship probably a lot earlier than, many other relationships would find themselves grounded in.
And I think if people are dating and maybe afraid to have a conversation, it's like my perspective was I would rather have this conversation, and if it's too much for them, then like that's telling me a lot about them as a person,
Mm,
and maybe that's not someone that I want to be with if they
mm,
can't kind of hold these sort of conversations at this stage. So I think it's a really good lens to kind of approach in if you are dating. It's like, okay, can I just be me and have these conversations that
mm.
are on my mind and share what I need to, and kind of be held in that as well.
I would say that's one of the significant differences between the boys and the men. Like the boys will be playing the games and you'll have to, double check yourself and you'll have to think about what you're saying. But like real solid blokes will appreciate your honesty, even if it does feel a little bit crazy in your mind, which we all have those thoughts. They'll appreciate the vulnerability and, you stepping forward. And even to that, I remember this happening a few times early on in our relationship. Like if Shani laid out some kind of vulnerability to me via text message or whatever, and I was in the middle of something, that period of time between laying out a little bit of vulnerability and the reply is quite uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I was really mindful that if I was really in the middle of something and she might have sent me like a vulnerable message or said something, that was beautiful, but might have challenged her if she didn't hear back soon. I was mindful to get back to that message and say, hey, I really appreciate your message. I'm just in the middle of something. I want to get back to you when I'm more present. So at least she could be at ease, not being like, oh, fuck, did I send the wrong message or whatever it might be as well. So just navigating that and just being like thoughtful and intentional as to, your new partner's nervous system or their attachment style and how you can support it as opposed to make it harder for them.
And I think such a beautiful question that we asked each other so much in the start of our relationship is like, what do you need? Or like, how can
Mm,
I support you this week?
mm,
And I think just asking that, most of the time the question is, no, I'm good. But having that there as a little bit of a check in is just so comforting to be like, okay, I can speak for what I need, or I can speak for things that feel a little bit uncomfortable that, maybe I'm not sure of. So I love that just as a little pop that in your back pocket,
yeah.
for if you are in the early stages of a relationship. So let's talk about polarity.
Mm,
And we've touched on it that like I'm probably the light and you are the dark. And masculine and feminine, all that. So can you talk to the idea of polarity in our relationship and what we do to strengthen and kind of balance this?
mm. So polarity's a massive piece in overall sexual dynamics and sexual chemistry. And my view amongst society at the moment is that we're in trouble with polarity. You've got women becoming more masculine, you've got men becoming more feminine. And if you kind of both end up in the middle, you neutralize the polarity, which means you kind of kill it off. So I'm hoping that there's somewhat of a revolution of which the women become more feminine. They go back to what is their core nature. And the majority of women, their core nature is actually feminine. And men go back to kind of more masculine and what is more kind of traditional in terms of those energies. Keep in mind we do have both within us, and it's worth being able to understand and integrate both the masculine and the feminine. For example, my kind of intuition is getting stronger over the last kind of few years, and that would be deemed more a feminine trait. And Shani's excellent with like structure, in her working week, and that would be deemed more a masculine trait. So you want to understand the value of both. But in terms of overall health of a polarity and a polarizing relationship, you want to strengthen the masculine and the feminine. One of the challenges for a lot of couples is because they spend so much time together, they become more alike of each other, which has its benefits, But if you aren't really intentional outside of that, then you run the risk of just becoming almost like one, which again, there's a meshed. Like there's an upside to that in terms of understanding each other on a deep level, but there needs to be real intention around strengthening that. So, Shani's excellent at spending lots of time with her women. I probably last year lacked a bit of this in terms of alone time with men because we spent a lot of time with couples last year, and that's been a real intentional piece for me to step more into this year. But doing that so that you can bring to life those more polarizing parts. And again, understanding what the masculine and feminine needs. Generally speaking, one of the best things for the masculine can do is to be on purpose. And I'm sure we'll talk about that at some stage today. But beyond that, challenge himself in some way that keeps him sharp in that masculine. It might be a physical challenge, it might be a mental challenge, something of that sort is really valuable. And generally speaking, the physical challenge is a really good one for the men. But at the end of the day, to have your man spend more time with quality men, and I'm not talking men that go and do bags and drink every weekend, and if you're doing that's fine. But I'm talking a different type of male who's really kind of driven, who's dialed in, who's more conscious, who will hold you accountable, support you, and that will help kind of strengthen that polarity as well.
And I think like for the women as well, it's like I know for me personally, because we do live together, we work together,
Mm,
we podcast together,
mm,
we socialize together. Like it can be a quite a slippery slope of like I can feel myself being in my masculine energy too much. And it's like finding those little ways, and you'll feel it with me. It's like if I've had a very on day with work, I'm still kind of in that masculine energy, like very kind of direct and calling the shots and all that stuff. And it's just finding those things that you can do to kind of soften your energy. And it's like there's a context for it. So it's like sometimes my masculine energy is very needed in business, but it's not needed in my
mm.
relationship because it can really throw things out.
I think the other thing when it comes to masculine and feminine dynamics is the nature of the corporate world is generally speaking very masculine. So as a female in the corporate world, whatever your work looks like, you need to be really intentional of stepping out of that role before you go home in terms of your relationship dynamic. So what that might mean is that, let's say that you work in the city and you're going home. What can you do to step out of that role, out of that archetype as you're going home? It might mean that you listen to certain music on your way home, or it might be a case of like just slowing everything down and you don't listen to any music. But what you want to consider both as a male and a female is how multi-dimensional beings we are. And what that means is that you have different archetypes and different kind of energies that you want to step into based on your environment. For example, the energy that I take to training, and potentially the type of music that I listen to is quite at times like an aggressive, like hardened version. Now, if I brought that energy into my relationship, Shani wouldn't really appreciate it that much, and vice versa. Like if I was going to training and I was listening to like Jack Johnson banana pancakes, that doesn't access the energy and the archetype that I prefer for training. So just knowing, and this takes a bit of time and then you'll get used to it, but knowing the different type of archetypes that will serve you in different environments. And there's a really good book called King, Warrior, Lover, Magician, which I recommend all blokes read. But knowing how to tap into your king energy, knowing how to tap into your warrior energy, knowing how to tap into your lover energy, knowing how to tap into your magician energy, and where they serve you as well.
I think some people can get caught in the trap of like, I need to be consistent in how I show up in all the things.
Different.
But it's like, yeah, it is so different. And it's like, we don't want to be the same person, when we're out with our girlfriends than we are when we're,
Mm,
at home making love with our partner.
mm.
Like, it's like we want to be able to play into those archetypes to like play on the strengths that they give as well.
Yeah.
So, as well as polarity, what else is
Mm.
affecting couples' sex lives these days?
So polarity is one thing you want to consider when it comes to your sex life. The resentment piece that we spoke of earlier, like really understanding on a deep level what murkiness is between you and your partner. Because if there's any murkiness, like imagine you guys as a relationship when you start, super clean between the energies between you. Anything that goes unspoken just becomes the seed that becomes the weed, which becomes the murkiness between you. So really work on cleaning up the energy between the two of you to improve your sex life. The other thing you want to consider is like what's required for desire. And we've spoken about this a lot, and we've got kind of a few dynamics that people are confused by in terms of we sleep in separate beds a few nights a week. They're like, what's wrong with you guys? But space is actually one of the best things for desire, because you've got these two conflicting parts playing out in a relationship. You've got the desire, you've got the need for love, stability, safety, security, and that gives you the kind of warm blanket, that we desire within a relationship. And that tends to be a very like, oh, that's a nice husband feel, the type of person that you would want to introduce to your family. Like that's got a safety about it. And you also need to bring to life the other parts. It might be the primal part. It might be the raw part. It might be the spontaneous part, the kind of edgy, the wild aliveness. And with one without the other breaks down. So to be able to bring to light spontaneous things within the relationship instead of just the same thing every week is super valuable. So I know one of the things, for us is when we're organizing date night, yes, there's a level of structure to it. E.g., we do date night on a Thursday night. And there's also a level of spontaneity, albeit very small, in that we often don't tell our partner what we're doing or where we're going. So you've got a mix of the structure and the spontaneity. And then, for example, one of the, I think Shani, like a lot of people, doesn't love letting go of control. But one of the things that we did in terms of the engagement or my proposal was she walked in on a Friday morning at 7 o'clock, and I said, she's got 90 minutes to pack her bag. We're going on a plane. So the whole proposal was, I guess, the spontaneous part where she literally had 90 minutes to pack a suitcase and go. Like, what would it look like for you to, as a man, what would it look like for you to take care of everything, e.g. babysitter, school, whatever is needed, so that you could take your partner away for a weekend, like, and not have her have to think about everything. And this is one of the challenges for a lot of guys, is they don't understand the significance of don't make her think. Like the most obvious example, and I've used this 1,001 times, is organizing dinner or organizing a restaurant. Dude, don't fucking ask her what she wants. Book it, let her know, let her like rest in peace knowing that she doesn't have to think about it. You might tell her what time she needs to be ready. You might tell her what type of thing she might want to wear. But instead of this conversation of like, oh, what do you want for dinner? Oh, what do you want for dinner? Like that back and forth, which is just ill. Go and fucking organize it.
And
Like,
you might make a wrong move. You
and
might
you
make
might
a
make a wrong
wrong
move.
booking.
And you might make
Yeah.
a wrong move. And this is important. Like, back yourself in, because we're now in a world of very passive, indecisive kind of soy boy energy where you're just not stepping into your masculine and you're not taking lead. So what would it look like for you to take lead? And in particular, women, for you to understand, if he does fuck up in whatever manner, praise the intention. It was well intended. Yes, he took you for Japanese and you're allergic to raw fish. He was well intended. So praise the intention, and blokes, use that opportunity to reflect. Like if you are decisive and if you take lead and you make a wrong move, bring it back to yourself and take the onus on yourself to learn from that experience. What could I do better next time? What skills do I need to develop? And just back yourself in, go again. One thing that Shani's excellent at is that exact thing. Like, where'd we go? Oh, that dinner, that Japanese.
Oh
I
my
took
God,
her
it was
out
so
for
bad.
Japanese dinner, and it was fucking by far the worst meal I've ever had. She didn't need to say anything. I knew. But instead of like ridiculing me for it, she was just like, oh, it's not the best. In fact, we made a joke of it pretty
Was the
quickly
worst.
that it was by far the worst date night I've ever taken her on. And I think we had crepes for dinner in the end. But like, just my guess from a female point of view and from a male point of view is the female, I'm guessing, would prefer him to back himself in, and make a call and take lead so that she doesn't have to think about it and potentially every now and then fuck up than to kind of passively, like indecisively need her input on everything. Like take lead, which is very different from control. And some blokes are actually trying to control, but take lead.
And I think for the women, it's like surrender to your man taking lead. And
Yeah.
it's so nice. Like I love when you're like, I've booked this restaurant, you know, you just need to be ready at this time. Like it's
Mm.
so nice just to be like, oh, that's taken care of. I don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
I want to touch back to the space element and taking
Mm.
intentional space because I think that a lot of, you know, couples that we do speak to when we do talk about that we do, you know, 2 or 3 nights separate in the week and we create a lot of intentional space. The immediate thing is what's wrong or, you know, is everything okay? But I think even, you know, when you went on your retreat and when we take time away from each other or go on holidays separately, it's like we do have things like, you know, we have a nightly check-in or we just message each other before we go to bed rather than so many back and forth messages in the day, not actually allowing your partner to have space. Can you talk about like the importance of space as well?
So space, the spontaneity, they all fit into kind of the same category essentially of creating desire within a relationship. Because ultimately, and people need to kind of zoom out a little bit to really understand this concept. Ultimately, what is familiar, what is safe, what is stable doesn't create desire. It creates love, and love and desire actually block each other at times. So it's really important to understand the difference between these two. So think about this in your own life if you're in a relationship. That person, your person, generally speaking, safe, stable, you know what you're going to get, and such a deep love. But there might be, if you're honest with yourself, there might be this person who you don't know much about. There's a level of mysterious about it. And where this actually shows up, the best example I've seen, I wish I can remember the name of the show.
Wait, sex life?
Sex
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah.
This is a perfect example of the difference between love and desire. It's a perfect example. So in Sex Life, show that was on Netflix, I think, the husband, safety, stability, security, awesome husband, does all the right things and provides that like safety, almost like the safety blanket within a relationship. He provides the love. And can't remember the guy's name, the guy with the
The huge dick.
massive dick, who's the musician.
He's like a bikey sort of guy with
Bikey
leather
guy.
jackets and like very edgy.
This is what you want to, you actually, as a man, ideally want to find a way to bring both of these personas into your relationship because you've got the husband who provides safety, security, stability, etc., familiarity. And you've also got the, I think he's like a music events organizer or something like that, who provides the wild, the edge, the spontaneity, the mysterious, like the passionate. And that's where a lot of couples fall down is the bloke doesn't know how to bring both of those into the relationship. So I think that's a really important piece to consider when keeping that sex life alive, essentially.
And I would say for the women as well, like, you know, I'm sure you seeing me in my Bonds pajamas every night isn't really the most exciting thing. But it's like having those explore nights where it's like you can try on that different archetype or that edgier side just to create a bit of like desire and spice that it wouldn't normally be there in your normal kind of 9 to 5 comfort sort of vibes.
Yeah.
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 So expectations and agreements. Can you kind of talk us through the difference between those and how they can show up in a relationship?
So when it comes to expectations and agreements in a relationship, the way I see it is that a lot of resentment that comes from a relationship is through expectations. And the way that I see expectations in a relationship is a one-way contract. I expect this from you. The difference for me between expectations and agreements is a two-way contract, something that we've both agreed on. So if you're looking to raise the bar in a relationship or you're looking to have your needs met, look to find a way to have a conversation that becomes an agreement as opposed to I expect this from you. Because when I expect this from you, you haven't necessarily agreed to it. And therefore, there's a discrepancy and I'm likely to create resentment towards you for something that you didn't even sign up to.
I think as well, it's like when you make it an agreement, it's like you're then taking in, oh, hang on, this is my ideas on how we can make this better. Whereas
Mm,
like expectation, as you said, is that one way, like this is my way or the highway.
mm,
But like there's been so many times where we've come together and it's like it's been a much better outcome because we've infused both of our
mm.
ideas to then make it an agreement. So I think yeah, coming together and kind of co-creating those agreements is like a much better place.
Well, when you come together um, as an agreement in a relationship, you've got buy-in from both parties. And then all you have to do is you just refer back to the agreements. Like if you're thinking about standards within your relationship and you're looking to raise the bar, then put together agreements because you don't have to argue. You just have to look back and go, hey, we agreed on this as a relationship. This is a standard that we've got, as opposed to, hey, this is what I expect from you. So one of the easiest ways I think to level up your relationship is to have agreements that you both agree to.
And this isn't like a full printed out 10
This
commandments
isn't,
that we
yeah. If you
just
want to
to
do that, you
just to
can,
premise that
but you
people
don't
might
have
think,
to.
God, these guys are real anal and
Yeah,
structured.
yeah,
We've got it
yeah.
laminated on the wall.
Yeah.
So we have spoken about power couple versus power struggle.
Mm,
Do you want to dive into that a little bit deeper?
yeah. So in 2024, the number one thing that really stood out to me with couples was the difference between a power couple and a power struggle. And the significant difference for me with a power couple is a sense of partnership. And I think at the core of every bloke is the desire to be in a partnership, whether they have the language for it or not, but that real sense that you are one team chasing one dream and that your partner is side by side, got your back at any stage. And again, from a personal level, having been in a couple of partnerships, you obviously, and a couple where it was like this real power struggle, fuck the difference. They're worlds apart in terms of being in a power couple. Like you go out as a man every day wanting to protect and provide for your family. You don't need to come home to the war within your home. And for me to feel like I'm in a partnership, I would want to move mountains for you on whatever level is required. And it comes back to this thing like, I reckon between one and two couples are in a real partnership. And the other eight are probably in some kind of power couple, power struggle. And it might be the emasculation of each other. It might be him trying to control her. There's just dynamics that are playing out within the relationship where there's not a real sense of unity. And for me, I have no doubt with whatever I want to tackle in the world that you have my back and that you're my number one cheerleader and that you always are seeing the potential in me, even at times when I don't see it in myself. And I think at the end of the day, every bloke wants to feel like he's in a partnership where she completely supports him and she's his number one cheerleader. And they're worlds apart. If you've never experienced a partnership, I don't think you realize what you're missing out on. But it's the best feeling in the world. And life is really fucking hard when you're in like a power struggle and you're in the opposite of that.
I was just thinking like life has got its own challenges, like not to be able to then come home to have your own challenges in
Mm,
your relationship.
yeah.
And I think for me, like relationships used to take up so much headspace and so much bandwidth that it's like now when you're in a stable, committed relationship that's a power couple,
Mm,
it allows so much freedom and so much bandwidth for life and work and creation. And it's like it's so nice coming home being like, "Oh, I know this is rock solid. Like I
mm.
don't need to worry or stress about this," which is such a beautiful feeling just to have that safety.
From what I've seen, most blokes would love to be able to focus on their business and not in a avoidant way, just because from a deep evolutionary point of view, their number one value is purpose. So if the bloke is in a partnership where he feels that the relationship's rock solid and that his partner's got his back, he can go out and do what he wants to do in the world. If he's in this power struggle, and I've been there a couple of times, so I totally get it, you don't have capacity to focus on your purpose. Like there's always fucking spot fires that you're putting out. It just takes up so much room. And I think for me, if I was to evaluate the difference between the relationship that is a partnership and a relationship that is a power struggle, the partnership that I have with you probably takes 1/10 of the headspace of the power struggles that I've been in previously and has a 10x return on the relationships that I've been in previously. So not only am I thinking about it 1/10 of what I used to, but I'm also getting a 10 times ROI on my relationship than what I used to. And that's the difference between a partnership and a power struggle.
I love all these stats that you're
I
pulling from
just,
everywhere.
I've just pulled it.
I'm like,
I
do
just pulled
not
it.
check any stat checks.
Don't. There's no research behind that.
I love it. So you talk about that it takes a village to build an
Mm,
epic relationship.
mm,
Can you talk to this idea a little bit more?
mm. So I think one of the core um, reasons that our relationship has been what it's been over the last 4 years is because we have such a support around us. And that support is friends, family, mentors, like you name it, we've got it. I tend to think that if you really want a relationship that is thriving, which is very different to a relationship that's just going through the motions and surviving, that you need a village of people around you. They often talk about it requires a village to raise a family. I also think it requires a village to raise a really good relationship. And having been in kind of previous relationships where I didn't kind of have the right people around me, to now be in a relationship where I've got a handful of mates that I could call upon anytime who have the skills to know how to listen to me when I need to be listened, challenge me when I need to be challenged, and to understand relationships. Many of my mates understand you well enough to be able to give a view on that, but also to have an unbelievable team of mentors, healers, therapists who we can constantly turn to or bring into our relationship when needed, means that we're never just going through the motions. We've always got people that are helping us evolve, heal ourselves as individuals, and heal us or help us grow as a couple. And I think over the last 4 years, maybe 90% of the relationship work that we've done has actually been as individuals. Like I work with couples on their relationship, but also there's so much work that you can do as individuals. We've done a couple of MDMA sessions. We have a relationship coach, and we've done a couple of sessions. But the majority of work that we've done as a couple for our relationship has been as individuals.
And I think there's such a power in utilizing a village to strengthen your relationship, because I know a lot of couples can get stuck in that trap of like their partner is everything, their
Mm,
therapist, their
mm,
relationship coach, their personal trainer, their go to for everything in life. And
mm.
I think that's what creates that enmeshment where you're like, I don't know if I want to, have sex with you, or I don't know if I want to like express my deepest desires to you, or like confide in you. It can really create that kind of like almost model coddly of just
Yeah.
mishmash. Yeah.
Well, for a lot of guys, their partner is their sole source of emotional connection, person to lean on. And what you actually end up creating is almost like a therapist, your wife, who's often more emotionally intelligent than you, as generally females are. You often create this like, oh, all of a sudden my wife is now my therapist. Or even worse for some dynamics is a mummy son dynamic where you're turning to your wife as your only source of support. And all of a sudden she's like kind of holding this little boy energy on top of the kids that you've probably already got. So one of the things as a bloke that's really important is having other sources of or other avenues to outsource to, in order to talk through what's coming up for you and not to put all the weight on your partner, and not from an avoidant point of view. That's really important to understand, but more from a like spreading the load. So when I think about our dynamic, I've probably got 10 people that I could lean on, like I could call up straight away, which means you're carrying 1/10 of the weight of my stuff. And therefore, it keeps our dynamic healthier for what we'd like it to be, which is a relationship dynamic, healthy, sexual relationship dynamic as opposed to you being the person that I confide in with absolutely everything. I'll preface that again with saying you're not to outsource what's going on from you from an avoidant point of view. It's more to kind of spread the load a bit.
And also, like when it comes to hobbies and whatnot, like I don't really want to come and watch the football with you
No,
at the
you
pub,
don't.
and
You
you don't want
don't.
to come and pull, cards and
Mm,
drink cacao at the beach. And it's like not expecting your partner to be everything
mm.
all at once for you, because it's just like that's what we have friends for. That's
Yeah.
what we have therapists for. That's what we have other people in our life for.
It's important to understand that your partner isn't everything and to know what are the non-negotiables for your relationship and what aren't. So for example, like let's say you're a bloke and you love running and you haven't found a running group, you haven't found a running mate, and you try to draw your partner into running, but she fucking hates it. Dude, go and get some fucking friends or a running group and go and run with them. It's not up to her to fill every single void. And to your point, like my partner doesn't really love the demons to the level that I do. You
I can
know,
appreciate the
she can
love, but I
appreciate
don't
it,
love.
but she doesn't love it. So instead of like going, oh, babe, I've got no one to watch the foot, like it's important for me to go and find my own fucking friends for running, for footy, for whatever's needed that aren't the core fundamentals of our relationship.
Preach. Okay, so gratitude and appreciation versus expectations and entitlement.
Mm.
How do you feel like this plays out in relationships?
So one of the best things that you do, which you learnt the game very early on, you might have even learned it before we were together, I don't know. But one of the best things that you do is you always have a deep level of gratitude and appreciation for what I do for you. Always, always. And it doesn't matter how small or how big it is, you always have gratitude and appreciation. And that becomes your biggest weapon, if we want to use the word weapon, which sounds a little bit manipulative, but let's roll with it. It becomes your biggest weapon because you, by being grateful and appreciative of what I do for you, get more of it. As a bloke, the moment that you expect or you become entitled to what he's doing for you, his energy is going to shift. Guaranteed. I've seen it 1,001 times. And he might not say it, but there'll be a slight shift in how he starts to show up. So if you want more of whatever the good is in your relationship, continue to show gratitude. Continue to appreciate what he does for you because he does want to protect, he does want to provide. But if there's not an appreciation for it or there's not gratitude, it starts to wear a little bit thin. So if you want more, give the positive reinforcement, give the gratitude, give the appreciation, and you'll get more.
Well, I feel like I would like to confess that I think it was in your first round of Limitless program that I ever did. You told us the taking out the bin story,
Yeah.
which is like, if you want your man to take out the bins,
Mm.
tell him how much you love it when he takes out the
Yeah.
bins and how much you appreciate it.
Mm.
And although this isn't why I, thank and appreciate you now,
Mm.
I think it was ingrained in me. It's such a nice energy to operate from, like thanking you for all the little things.
Yeah.
I probably thank you maybe like 20 times a day because it's like, hey, thanks for filling my drink bottle, or thank you for going to the shops and getting food.
Mm.
I would much rather operate from over thanking than under thanking, and that
Yeah.
you're feeling like I am slipping into entitlement or just not appreciating the little
Yeah.
things. And I think it goes for both ways. Like, the appreciation goes so far,
Mm.
and it's like maybe a partner's been hanging out the washing or doing the washing or, cooking dinner, and it's just like sending that little bit of appreciation and gratitude. It just shifts the energy of your relationship dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to even speak to that because I think this is a question as well. So there's a group called the Gottman Institute who I studied relationship coaching through, and they spoke about healthy relationship dynamics versus, I can't remember their exact language, but essentially non-healthy dynamics. And in a healthy relationship, there's a 5-to-1 ratio of positive reinforcement. In a not so healthy relationship, there's a 0.08 to 1 ratio. So not even one bit of compliment, whatever that might be, to one bit of criticism, etc. So what has helped our relationship massively is the fact that Shani is constantly appreciating, constantly showing gratitude for what I do for us, for her, for the family. And because of that that ratio of positive reinforcement, she gets more and more of it. So it's just a game of like learn to play the game of positive reinforcement and you'll get more of it. So yeah, I mean, we have our moments where there's critiquing, criticizing, complaining's not really a thing in our relationship, but it's, I'd be interested to know what our ratio is. You're better at positive reinforcement to me than maybe I am to you, but I would say that you've probably got like a 20-to-1 ratio, and for that reason, you get more of it.
But I think it's like I find you're more appreciative and gratitude and sorry, showing gratitude probably because I'm doing it as well. So it
Yeah.
just creates like a really nice like dynamic.
Mm.
And I think it softens the blow when you do have to bring up, something that maybe is like a bit of criticism or like, hey, can you do this differently next time? It softens the blow of it because you've sandwiched it in between like, 5 bits of appreciation and another 5 to come or whatever
Yeah.
the numbers might be.
Mm.
So the question is, my man is such a good guy and would never do anything and would never do wrong, but I don't feel like I really trust him. I don't understand why or how.
So for a lot of women that I've experienced both personally and professionally, it can be a bit of a mind fuck to work out why they don't trust their partner when they know that he would never do wrong in terms of, poor behavior. And ultimately, where a lot of trust starts to get broken for women is when he lacks integrity between his words and his actions. And often, in relationship, when we're talking about trust, we think there's some catastrophic one-off event. And for that reason, you don't trust him or her anymore. But often the trust is actually broken in the kind of minuscule things that happen day to day. And in particular for guys, what you want to consider is integrity between your words and your actions. So it could be something as simple as you saying that you're going to get the milk on the way home and you don't. As an isolated incident, it's not a massive issue. But when that's done continuously over a 1, 3, 5, 10-year period, then it becomes an issue. And what eventually you start to create is she just looks at you blankly, knowing that the words that come out of your mouth hold no weight and hold no power. So a kind of theory that you can think of or a metaphor for it is imagine that you have a jar full of marbles and every marble is a trust, a piece of trust. Yes, in some relationship, there's a big catastrophic event that happens and every single marble is tipped out. But in a lot of relationships, it's just one marble at a time. You said you were going to do something and you didn't. One marble, one marble. And for a lot of blokes who don't understand the importance of integrity, they don't think about like, oh, I said one thing and I did another. And I reckon one of the best questions that you can ask yourself, ask your partner in a relationship is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is my integrity between my words and my actions? And that might be a brutal place to start. Brutal. A client kind of asked this probably 8 weeks ago, and his wife gave him a 2. He thought he was a 5. His wife gave him a 2. And now the work begins on closing what I call the integrity gap, the gap between your words and your actions. So when it comes to trust, yes, in some relationships, there's big catastrophic things that happen, but a lot of the trust that is broken in your relationship is because of a lack of integrity between your words and your actions.
So if someone listening feels like they are at a 2 and they want to sort of minimize that integrity gap, what are some things they can start to do to kind of close that gap?
Just have it at the forefront of your mind on a daily. If you're trying to close the integrity gap, have it at the forefront of your mind every day. What are you saying and what are you actually doing? And again, for a lot of blokes who haven't done a huge amount of work around this space, whether it's men's work or relationship work, you might not understand the importance of integrity. But as you spend more time in this space, start to think about what you're saying and are you following through? And yes, if your wife's come back to you and said you're a 2 out of 10 when it comes to integrity between your words and your actions, you're not going to get to a 10 overnight. It'll take a bit of time, but maybe you check in every 3 months. Where am I at, with my integrity gap? And over the course of, 3 months to 12 months, you might actually bring back to integrity. And therefore, when there's integrity between your words and your actions, you've created a level of trust, you've created a level of safety. And honestly, which is a hard one to stomach, you've often created a level of respect that's been earned back. Because when you lack integrity between your words and your actions, which will be hard for some people to stomach, she does start to lose respect for you. So I know for blokes, if women, their ultimate desire is to be loved, for blokes, one of their ultimate desires is to be respected. And if you lack integrity between your words and your actions, it's only a matter of time before the respect that she has towards you starts to wear away.
So, this next question comes from someone who says, I value growth in relationships, but I feel like my relationship has become a bit boring. Do you have any recommendations?
So when it comes to a relationship of which you value growth, what is alive in your relationship now can easily be dead in 12 months' time. Like for us, what is alive in our relationship where we both value growth? If I was to stand still for the next 12 months, Shani would be extremely bored in 12 months' time. So it's really important to understand that is the nature of humans and relationships that are designed to grow and evolve. And, the weekly check-in is an opportunity to do that. But think about what area of your relationship really does need to evolve. Is it your communication? Is it your sex life? Is it that, you know, you have an enmeshment and you have a codependent? Like, what is it that you need to focus on? And sometimes that's things that you focus on as individuals, and sometimes that's things that you focus on as a couple. And for Shani and I, most of our growth has been as individuals that serves our relationship. Every now and then we've got like a core piece where we're like, okay, we both need to work on this together. But generally speaking, we are growing in our own way. And I think that's really important to understand is sometimes in a relationship, we don't think our partner's growing because they're not growing in the way that we are or the way that we want them to, but they are actually growing. So just be mindful to like check in with yourself first to see that your partner's not actually growing, or is it more a case that they're just not growing in the way that you think they should or that you would like them to?
Which comes back to the expectations you put on them.
Expectations.
And I think like the strongest couple we see, or the strongest couples we see, are the ones that evolve with the seasons of life. Like if you are clinging on to a season and holding on to, a time in your relationship and trying to like hold on to that, you're not evolving. Like you're standing still and you're staying stuck. So it's like being fluid and going with the seasons, knowing that relationship changes. And, I've found, and I know that you can speak for this too, is like some of our hardest times have been the springboard for the next evolution of our relationship. And so that builds a lot of trust for us too, knowing that anything we go through, like this has been planted here for a reason for us to springboard to the next level in our relationship.
I would take that a step further and say that every single one of our hardest moments have been have created the evolution. And as a couple, you have a whole bunch of moments that either bring you closer together or create a level of friction and fragment the relationship. So depending how you tackle challenging moments will depend where it goes. Like there are moments every single week, probably like little micro moments of which if you guys communicate and connect well, bring the relationship closer together and deepen it. But if it becomes like this thorn, then it actually sends you the opposite way. So one of the things that has me feel really good about my relationship with Shani is I know when we have our hard moments, there's a epic evolution on the other side of that. And for me personally, that gives me great confidence in the future. I personally do not understand how couples of which one or both parties in the relationship don't value growth. I don't understand how you can feel extremely confident about the future if one, you can't tackle challenges together, and two, you don't grow. Because it's only a matter of time before your relationship's dead. So there's maybe a scary level of delusion as to like, oh, this relationship's good, but yet my partner doesn't really like challenges and they don't grow. Like there's a ticking time bomb on that relationship.
we caught up with some friends the other night, and one of them was a new friend, and he goes, "Oh, I just found out Blake's a relationship coach. You guys must never fight." And I
Nice.
just laugh because like although we don't fight, but we have very tough times in our
Mm,
relationship. But I just know, as you said, it's like everything that happens in our relationship, the good and the bad, is like so perfectly, you know, placed in our path. Like,
mm,
the challenging things that have come up recently with, pregnancy and
mm.
wedding and all of that. It's like I can just see how divinely sort of placed they are in our journey to strengthen us. And I think a lot of, and this is a presumption, but I think a lot of people are scared of the tough times because they think something's wrong or, maybe we're not meant to be together, which I know is a default mindset. But it's like when you actually see these as like, no, this is actually perfectly planted in our path to strengthen us and help evolve our relationship to the next level. I think that's such a good framework to kind of think through. Yeah. Okay, so my man kind of ignores me when he's at work. Any ideas on why this might be the case and how to navigate it? I laugh because this would be so me asking this like 4 years ago. Why is he ignoring me?
So if you're a female, we'll talk female, male for now. But if you're a female and your husband ignores you when you're at work, you're not the only person. And also, there's a strong chance that it's not personal. There's a couple of reasons for this. First is that blokes tend to be single focused, which means they do one thing very well, but unlike women, they can't multitask very well. So if you call your husband at work and you're telling him about the chicken salad sandwich that you had for lunch, it's probably not the best time. Blokes, especially when they're really on purpose, I've found and experienced this firsthand, want to be left alone during the day. Let him go and do his thing, stay focused on being the provider that he wants to be, and just like leave him to his own devices. Especially don't bring small talk into the day. Like that can wait till when you get home, till when you go for a walk in the afternoon, whatever it might be. So understand the significance that men are single focused. They do one thing really well, just don't distract them. The other thing to my point earlier is there's a real difference between men who are on purpose and men who aren't. Men who are on purpose will do what they can to eliminate, move distractions. And he loves you very much, but you might be a distraction for him during the day. Let him be, leave him alone. Whereas blokes who aren't necessarily as strong in their purpose or who aren't on purpose, they don't mind the cheap thrills. They don't mind the dopamine hits, the distractions, whatever it might be. But a bloke who's really dialed in, I personally have a lot of respect for a guy who's really dialed in with his purpose and just eliminates distractions through the course of the day. So if he grunts at you when you try to call him through the day, if he takes 5 hours to get back to you the message, see it as a man who's on purpose, who's single focused and wants to be the provider and doesn't want to be distracted, as opposed to making it about you.
And what about for, say, women who feel that their partners aren't on purpose and they can feel that they are distracted and they're not really sort of thriving in their career? Is there any suggestions you have there?
So if your man isn't on purpose, there's a number of different avenues. So low hanging fruit, meditation, journaling, speaking to a coach, counselor, therapist, stillness, silence, solitude, like those type of things. But in order to, if for whatever reason your man's not on purpose and you've looked at those, then I would consider bringing out the big guns. And for me, the big guns is a 10-day silent meditation retreat, something called Vipassana, or a form of psychedelics. And as someone who is a psychedelic practitioner, I think the best thing that you can do when you're lacking clarity is explore that world. Now, there's a lot of red tape with psychedelics, and I don't recommend it for everyone. And I don't think you should explore it until you feel really called. But as a man who's lacking purpose and who needs clarity, you need to find a way to access that clarity. And yes, that might mean that you need to take yourself away, from the family, or even do something like a vision quest. you are not going to be the best version of yourself for you and your family until you're on purpose. And because of that, you need to do whatever it takes to find your purpose.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Mm.
I'm sure women are probably thinking, how am I just going to be like, hey, I think you need to do a psychedelic journey, or, I think you need to do a 10-day silent retreat?
Mm.
Because then we're kind of slipping into that solution, Mrs.
Yeah.
Fix It. How could we bring this up in a way that's going to be well received by our partner?
So, one of the um, approaches you probably don't want to take, often with a bloke, is telling him what to do. But one of the things that Shani is excellent at, and I think good coaches are actually really good at, is finding a way to ask questions that get them thinking beyond kind of their normal way of thinking, or potentially leave breadcrumbs along the way so that he can find his own answers. And if you can learn the art of leaving breadcrumbs, it'll go a long way to your man stepping into, a power instead of being kind of told what to do. So that might look like you asking him something along the lines of like, how are you feeling about your work at the moment? So you're really bringing to light the fact that he like hates it, or what do you think you might need for kind of clarity around your purpose? Like ask the questions that help him lead. And then if he's still struggling, what would it look like for you to leave breadcrumbs and help him find his own answers? And there's a bit of a skill to it, but I think that is a much better approach than telling him what to do.
And a little hack with AI technology, just pick up his phone and whisper into it, Blake Worrall-Thompson,
Mm,
relationship coach, Blake Worrall-Thompson, relationship
yes,
coach.
it
And then
works. Works
somehow
wonders.
Blake will pop up on his
Yes.
algorithm.
A guy, honestly, though, guys, like I can imagine a bunch of women going, I couldn't have my husband leave the house for 10 days because we've got, he's got responsibilities, we've got kids, etc. The question I would get you to consider is, what is the cost of him not leaving the house for 10 days in order to find his purpose? Because you're going to have a half-baked man for the next 30 to 40 years if he doesn't. So yes, the thought of him going and doing a silent meditation retreat for 10 days and you having no access to him and having to somehow take more responsibility or get, your mother in or the mother-in-law, yes, that would be extremely challenging. And you need to decide whether you want your man purposeless for the next 30 years and the detrimental effect that that would have on both your relationship and how he shows up as the man of the house.
So that was my last question. So that's a
Boom.
wrap.
Guys, that's all things relationships, men, etc. Hopefully there's plenty there for you to take and implement into your world.
So much juice in that episode.
Peace.
Love it.